Okay.
All right. I'm pleased to be joined today by Taylor Boileau. This is Brian Johnson with Finance and Commerce. Taylor, I hope I got the pronunciation of your name right. Was that close enough?
Yep, that was good enough.
All
Perfect.
right. All right. Well, Taylor is one of the founders of Blueprint for Change, which is a construction industry advocacy group doing exactly what the name implies, focusing a lot about construction safety, ethics, making sure that construction job sites are safe places for everybody. And I wanted to ask you about that. But first, can we talk a little bit? Just could you introduce yourself briefly, Taylor, and tell us a little bit about how you got into the construction industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my history, my dad was a superintendent, like most people in the construction space. Usually, you know someone in order to get into it. I went to school for civil engineering up in Ontario. If you know where Thunder Bay, Ontario is, that's where I went to school. After I graduated, I went into the workforce, worked with a lot of national general contractors, worked my way up from project engineer to superintendent. And then during that time, I saw a lot of the amazing things about this industry, about the people that work in it, and about the possibilities it creates. But I also saw the dark side of construction. I saw the harassment, the hazing, the discrimination. And I really found a passion for trying to advocate for people. I've been presenting at national conferences for the past 5 years, AGC, ERMI, CURT. And I decided it was time for me to do more. So that's why I started the Blueprint for Change.
And when did you first get into the industry, and when did you start Blueprint for Change?
Yeah, so I got into the industry back in 2016, and then I started the Blueprint for Change in January of 2025. So brand new company. We're just getting started.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit more about Blueprint for Change and your mission?
Yeah. So our mission is pretty simple and yet really it's a mountain to climb. Our mission is to try and change construction culture one conversation at a time. So during my time while I was a superintendent, there were a lot of individual conversations I had every single day that allowed me to help people shift their perspective, whether it was on mental health, suicide in construction, women in construction, whatever it might be. I had a lot of individual conversations, and I realized the power in a single conversation and the power of relationships that you build. So, the Blueprint for Change is all about having a conversation, whether it's our podcast or whether it's our pilot program we're rolling out. It's all about trying to have those individual conversations and build relationships in order to shift construction culture one conversation at a time.
Yeah, and to back up a little bit, I saw on your website there are some pretty staggering numbers, some sobering numbers and statistics about the industry, and I guess the fact that I think s- construction is like the second highest industry for the suicide rates and substance abuse, things like that. Harassment on the job. And tell us a little bit about that, and just sort of set the stage here for what we're talking about and how serious some of these concerns are. I guess just to start with the mental health part of it, um, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you've been to any national conferences or local conferences, we are starting to talk about mental health a lot more since about 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. At least that's my observation of it. we the CDC found that the construction industry has the second highest rate of suicide or substance misuse. Now, there's a lot of contributing factors to that. Part of it is if we're looking at substance misuse, right? The people in the on site who are actually swinging the tools, all that, they are abusing their bodies, right? They're having to bend over, ergonomics. We talk a little bit about that. They might have fallen in a harness saved their life, but they're going to have back injuries. They're going to have remaining issues from that, just from using their body every single day. So go to the doctor, get prescribed something legally, and then all of a sudden it becomes a dependency. Now, that's not limited to drugs, it also happens with alcohol. I've been on the road. When you're on the road and you're traveling all across the country and you have nothing to do after work, what do? You go down to the bar and you grab a beer, and it becomes so normalized in our industry. So substance misuse rate is really high. Mental health issues in the construction industry are very prevalent, although not talked about among the workers at least. There's a variety of reasons for that. First of all, it's a male-dominated industry. Men aren't often taught how to express their emotions and how to ask for help. In the construction industry, it's often looked at as a sign of weakness when you do ask for help. So that you combine that with some substance misuse, you combine that with a lack of knowledge about the resources out there or willingness to reach out for it. That's kind of what creates our suicide issue in construction in a nutshell. There's a lot of other factors that go into it, but that's kind of what we're looking at. And what we are looking at with the blueprint for change is the fact that the root cause of a lot of these issues is culture. The culture of asking for help is weakness. The culture of, oh, just grab a beer after work, or, oh, you're stressed, just get something for that, right? So we're trying to address the culture as the root cause of a lot of the issues we're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, and a lot of it goes hand in hand too, right? You talked about the substance abuse, and that can lead to or this the I guess the physical toll on their bodies, which leads to substance abuse, which can lead to depression, and a lot of different things kind of go hand. Being away from home, away from your families, oftentimes, and your support system. That often happens when you're in that industry. So it looks like you're trying to look at it really from a holistic perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we look at our pilot program that we're rolling out, we were very intentional about the type of trainings we included. First, focusing on worker well-being, because before you can take care of a team or work on team culture, you got to take care of yourself. So we talk about mental health and suicide. We talk about the effects of fatigue and nutrition and emotional regulation on you. And then we look at the cultural aspect of how do we create psychological safety now in a team? How do we create leadership at every level? So, yeah.
So tell me more about the pilot program, and you touched on it a little bit there, but you have some training involved and some different steps that you take and kind of a progression. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So our pilot program that we're rolling out, it is essentially showing companies the effective culture on operational success. Now, when we talk about that in regards to construction, we're looking at safety, productivity, and quality. So what we do is over the course of about 20 weeks, we engage with a company. That company has two crews. Think of it like an experiment, right? One is the experimental group, the other one is the control, because as teams work together, they naturally become more productive, more safe, hopefully, better quality, right? So we are working with two crews and we're doing observations on these four metrics: culture, safety, quality, and productivity. The experimental group, once we get kind of a baseline of where everyone's at, they go through training. Like I said, the worker well-being and then the cultural training. It basically teaches them how to take care of themselves and then how to take care of their teams. This entire thing is built on the premise of if we take care of our workers, they are going to take care of us as companies. At the end of this cultural training and worker well-being training, we then do a final establishment of where are they at? How did we see, how much improvement did we see in quality, safety, productivity, overall culture? And then we follow back up about 8 weeks later just to see if that change was sustained. At the very end, we provide the company with a report, basically detailing here are the changes we saw, here's how it's sustained, and here are recommendations for your company moving forward.
Hmm. And one of the things, again, to back up a little bit is the you mentioned it's a male-dominated industry, and oftentimes women aren't shown the proper respect on the job, frankly. And you cited some statistics. I think 25% of women reported having been harassed on the job, 60% face some kind of discrimination. Tell me about that, first of all, from a general sense, and have you experienced that in your time in the industry?
Yes and yes. We'll start with the first part. So the statistic. When you look at women in construction, you're absolutely right. It's a male-dominated industry, and that means that there are going to be barriers there that aren't necessarily there for men. So whether that is taking a look at PPE, right? We talk about hard hats, safety glasses, vests all the time, right? Only 20% of women are given the appropriately sized PPE.
Hmm.
Only 20%. That means 80% of our women are not receiving the appropriate size PPE, which may just seem like, oh, it's fine. We'll get it when we get it, right? But here's the reality. What is that saying to the woman that walks on your job site? It's saying, this isn't meant for you. This space isn't designed for you. It's the same thing as if you look at porta-johns on a job site, right? Oftentimes when you walk on a job site as a woman, they're not there day one. You have the men's, and they're like, well, we'll order you one. In the meantime, use this one. What's that saying? We weren't expecting a woman to walk on our job. Now, if we then take a deeper dive and look into that harassment and discrimination, 25% of women experience sexual harassment and 66% have experienced discrimination. This was according to that EEOC report that was released back in almost 2 years ago in 2023. This happens. It's something that I talk to a lot of men who want to be great advocates for women. And I think that they are, but they are naive to the fact that this still happens because it's not talked about.
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
experienced harassment on a job site. I was a superintendent, so I had some level of authority, right? And I was being harassed on the job site. Oh God, I had people texting me outside of work. I had people sending me photos. I was worried people were going to follow me home. I've had guys touch me inappropriately. It happens.
Mhm.
When you look at the discrimination piece, I've been told I'm only on a job site because I check a box. I've been told straight up, I don't want a woman on my job site. There are things that women face in this industry and they take it in stride because that's what we're supposed to do. And we are already on the outside and we don't want to complain. When you're someone on the outside, you don't want to call more attention to it, right? You don't want to be the snitch. You don't want to be the one who gets everyone in trouble. And so a lot of people keep it in. I've talked to many women who are in the trades who have experienced worse than what I have, to being even sexually assaulted on job sites. We
Mhm.
like to think it doesn't happen because it doesn't get reported, but that's just not the case. It's just not where we are. I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah, it's pretty grim. And is that part of your training just to educate people about that and just to like what can be done to change things for the better?
Yeah. So part of our training, we don't go into a deep dive on women necessarily, but part of
Mhm.
our cultural training is on understanding differences. It doesn't matter whether it's a generational difference, if you're different races, if you're different genders, sexualities. When we have differences in the industry, they are typically put to the outside. Um, and so we talk about understanding each other, understanding where other people come from, and understanding that what we say can hurt. I've been told many jokes on job sites about women, and I will admit I've laughed because I don't want to make other people uncomfortable. I'd rather be uncomfortable myself. But teaching people that, hey, when you say this, people may laugh, but they may not find it funny. They may just be trying to appease you. Yes, that is part of it. And we will touch a little bit on women in construction, people of color, generational differences, but it's just overall about trying to understanding each other as humans and that we all have emotions and experiences that affect us.
Mhm. Yeah, you just want, especially now more than ever, you want all people to feel welcome on a job site when the industry's facing a worker shortage. And, why alienate so many people, right? When the industry needs workers. So it's not just the right thing to do from a moral standpoint, but it's the practical thing to do, the way I see it, just because of you can't afford to be alienating people in
No,
that
I
industry.
mean, you're absolutely right. There's a business case for trying to include people. When you look at the workforce crisis, right? We've been talking about this since I entered the industry in 2016. We've seen it coming, and everyone talks about every retiring of boomers, right? But we have a pretty big problem in the fact that since 2011, the amount of money spent on construction has increased 173%, where our actual workforce has only increased 33%. That's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and some analysis I did. We can't keep up. We need as many people as we can to come into the industry and not just come into the industry, but stay in the industry. And how do we
Mhm.
get people to stay? It's through the culture.
Mm. Yeah, great point. Um, so how can people find out more about your Blueprint for Change and your pilot program? And tell us a little bit about where they can go for more information.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. We're going to be creating a LinkedIn page for the company soon. But if you want to link in with me, Taylor Boileau. Another way is to go to our website. So www.theblueprintforchange.com. Uh, and then the last way would be we also have a podcast. So every single week we tackle different issues in the industry. So we've tackled uh, oh, what have we done so far? We
Mhm.
talked about the good, the bad, and ugly of construction. We talked about love on the job site. My boyfriend and I are the ones who started this company. So we talked a little bit about our experience and also the strain that construction can put on relationships with the long hours and helping our loved ones to understand what we go through. We've also talked about the workforce crisis, all sorts of things. We got women in construction coming up. We got a bunch of good stuff. So if you want to check us out, you can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or iHeartRadio.
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely check that out. Highly recommend it. Taylor, any other final thoughts before I let you go?
Just if we want this industry to change, we have to represent the change we want to see. And it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be easy. But our philosophy is that we can change construction culture one conversation, one person, one job site at a time. So start small and we'll get there.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your time, Taylor. Interesting conversation. Good luck with your Blueprint for Change.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Have a good day. All